Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Heuristics Podcast. This is Kobe Ben Melech. I want to read to you a tweet that caught my eye last night. It's by Ben Shapiro, a conservative commentator in America who has a huge following. The context is that he is responding to an article in which he was singled out for holding harmful views about gay people and how that is radicalizing young people against homosexuals. This is the relevant part of his tweet. I suppose my bad view is that natural law views of human sexual behavior and its moral component are correct. This is the part that is unacceptable, that I believe married heterosexual activity is morally superior to all other types of sexual activity. Well, tough shit. It is. All of human reproduction and societal stability relies on the moral superiority of married heterosexual activity. Pretending otherwise is a road to both demographic decline and societal instability. So, this is the kind of thing that makes people in the modern world feel very uncomfortable. For one, you can sense how such thinking can become dangerous in the real world. And second, despite my first objection, is that there is this nagging question that hangs in your mind after you're finished reading his tweet, which is, well, what if Ben is right? Are we all homophobes now? It's indisputable that human reproduction relies on straight sex. Technology has allowed gay couples to have biological children, yeah, sure. But we haven't rewritten the rules of procreation. Fundamentally speaking, sex between men and women is still the only game in town. I also agree that married two-parent homes are best for children, and therefore our society. But it's the claim about heterosexual moral superiority that is the heart of the issue. Is that true? It's hard to say. But here's where I landed, though. Suppose we live in a world of Ben's making, where every living person believed that gay sex is morally inferior to straight sex. What would that demand of gay people striving to be the best version of themselves? Is it really moral to force yourself into unwanted sex? And it's the mechanical view of sex, and here I'm putting words into Ben's mouth, so I could be dead wrong about what he really thinks. But it's this notion that the ultimate value of sex is procreation that would be so depressing if it was completely true. I grant that having children is the most profound and rewarding thing that has happened to me, and this is true for every other parent that I know. But again, I ask that you imagine sex as though it were a couple trying to have a baby, and just that. Sex becomes both a rigid chore and a circus animal trick. Have you ever seen couples desperately trying to get pregnant? Those people do not seem very happy to me. Sex is an act of love. To enter someone else's body, or have someone enter yours, is to forever join an entirely separate category of relationship. Don't we all know who we've had sex with? Aren't we in some way bonded to those people, especially with the ones we had deep feelings for? And if you share my belief that love is the highest aim of life, in fact, it's the ultimate justification of life, then sex between loving partners, gay or straight, is a beautiful and private thing. I share this with you not because you ought to care what I think, or even what Ben thinks about such matters. Ultimately, you need to make up your own mind. What I found cool about Ben's tweet is how much it made me think about my views on homosexuality for the past 12 hours. And this only happened because Ben was brave enough to share his thoughts on Twitter, and the company allowed him to do so, of course. Which brings me to the topic of today's episode, which is free speech. What is it? I can't remember a point in my life when this many people have come to its defense, and yet I can't get a firm grip on what free speech really means. Jordan Peterson gave a magnificent lecture. It was just absolutely magnificent lecture on free speech at Bucknell University about a year ago. It's about 4 to 5 minutes long. I can't do it any justice, so really go and listen to it. But his main point is that speech is the most social form of thought. We all think in words, by and large, and if we do not allow ourselves to freely discuss the thoughts that rattle around in our heads, even the dangerous ones, then we are liable to be blindsided by ignorance that could have been dispelled by so called forbidden conversations. The true path, in fact, the only path to progress, is the unfettered exploration of individual consciousness. But it's still complicated. I mean, most societies, perhaps all of them, do not let you say whatever you want. Go slander someone to a huge audience and see if you don't get sued. The internet and social media platforms are increasingly available to young kids. What kinds of things should they be exposed to? Is it okay for a 5-year-old, say, to watch a member of ISIS chop off someone's head? These are genuinely difficult questions, and I got a chance to speak about this with Noam Schwartz, who is the CEO of Active Fence, an Israeli startup that helps some of the world's biggest social media platforms identify extreme content like pedophilia or incitement to violence. I thought his views on free speech are especially relevant given how much attention and flack social media companies have caught for violating the spirit of free speech. We touched on other subjects too, like how exposure to death at a young age can be a transformative event. I like Noam, mostly because he is very thoughtful, which is the kind of person I would want at the forefront of today's free speech debate. In any event, here's our conversation.
Listen, man, I had like an epiphany or something last night,
Okay.
which is that put that part of your brain that's like, this is an interview or like, just put that aside. This is just two, I hope I can say two friends talking, but if it's not two friends, at least it's
Oh, it's friends.
good,
Sense.
good. Wait, just put the microphone a little bit closer to you. Yeah,
Sure.
like this.
Okay. That's better.
But as honestly, just as two people, or at least one person, right, me that respects you, like from the little I know about you, which is like,
Beautiful.
thank you. Well, the little that I know about you, which is like, you grew up in an ultra orthodox.
Orthodox. Yeah.
Orthodox.
Like not Haredi. It's
Okay,
Like,
Haredi just is
it's a
like
spectrum, right?
right, but describe.
Dati Leumi. It's like Bnei Akiva, those type of
But your parent, like you grew up in a household that
religious.
was religious,
They went
right?
to like yeshiva for like 12 years.
Right.
Like my brother went to like yeshiva. Like
Yeah.
it's all like they're still like holding a religious way
Right.
of life.
And how many siblings do you have?
There's like quite a few. I have like mostly half brothers and half sisters. So,
But how many in total? How are you?
Like 5.
You're 5.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a big family, and like everyone in the family is. Oh shoot! Damn it! I forgot to record.
It's recording there for like
It's recording there, but not without any sound. Anyway,
We can start again.
we'll start again. So yeah, like again, as I was saying before we started recording.
You had an epiphany.
Well, I had an epiphany, but also just again that I really want to stress that part of your brain that thinks this is an interview, just toss it to the side.
Take it
And just forget that. There's no one else listening. It's just me and you right now
Two
in a
friends
room.
having coffee.
Well, you're having coffee. I'm just thinking out loud. So as a conversation that, I really want to stress that I do have a profound respect just from the little bit I know about you. So we were saying that you grew up in a religious household,
Yeah.
Jewish religious household with five siblings. So there were 5 of you total or 6 total?
So it wasn't under the same house. Like my parents got separated when I was like pretty early,
Okay.
pretty young.
Okay.
So I never grew up with all of my family in the same place.
Okay.
So, like my mom and like and couple of siblings. My dad, he also got married like several times. So it's like
Wow.
it's complicated.
Wow. Okay. But both your parents are religious.
Yeah.
Okay. So at what point did you say I'm not going to be religious anymore?
It took a while think, but like since I got it, it's a complicated question. It's like because also there's like a spectrum. There's not like one single point. There was like one point when I stopped, like I stopped with all of the external symbols, like no kippah, no nothing.
That's a big deal, man.
Yeah,
And
that
when,
was
how old were you when that happened?
19 or 20.
19. Okay.
Like somewhere around that time. But it started way before. It's like started since I was 5 or 6, and
5 or 6.
yeah, it's like I felt that this is not for me. But you live in a society,
Sure.
you have friends, you have let's say older figures that kind of like tell you this is how it's supposed to do, and
Yeah.
also they kind of like diss the other types of way of life. It's like
So you were like building up the courage when you were 6 as a small kid because you don't know anything. You just
Yeah.
follow what everyone else is doing.
yeah,
and
but
then
I grew up in a very pluralistic house. So
pluralistic.
yeah,
Okay.
so it's like they always kind of like helped worked with what they got. So it's like they knew that I'm not like a simple kid. It's
Okay.
like so they said, okay, whatever. We're not going to force you to do anything. We're not going to force you to believe in anything. You want to do that, do that. You want to do this, do this. We'll try to point you to the right direction, to the best of our knowledge.
Right.
But you do you.
Right.
I think it worked pretty well for them.
And okay, so they gave you the space to sort of explore your own identity and what your conscious is telling you is correct. And at 19, you said, "All right, now I'm really going to start acting
Yeah.
this out."
Yeah, and nothing really changed, honestly. It was just
your
like,
relationship with your parents, you mean, or your family?
in nothing. Nothing really changed. I was the same person. I did the same things. I
Right.
believed in the same stuff. I hanged with the same people.
Hmm.
But I wasn't pretending to be something that I'm not
Right.
anymore. Not
Right.
for like the sake of
Yeah.
what people will say, not the sake of society, not the sake of
Yeah.
let's say family.
Yeah.
I still get a lot of shit from a certain part of the family, but it's like it doesn't really matter.
So
I'm sorry if you're hearing that.
no, no. I'm sure they're really proud. Seriously. But it reminds me of something that Dave Chappelle said. Do you know who Dave Chappelle is?
Yeah, but I never got to see any
Oh,
any of his videos.
Dude, okay.
I heard there are many.
All right. So I really have 2 goals now, and for this conversation, one is at some point you're flying later today.
Yeah.
Somehow get a Dave Chappelle stand-up comedy hour.
Okay.
Pick any one of them and just watch
Yeah,
it.
I think there's they are on Netflix.
They're all on Netflix. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not all of them, but like the recent ones. Yeah, he's so good. So he said in one of his comedy specials,
Mhm.
something he was talking about his high school, and he was talking about gay kids and how they always had like this posture when they were 14, 15 years old and they were drinking wine. Like, he's obviously embellishing the story, and then he said something profound about them. It was something like, I'm paraphrasing, but it was like they were fighting for the right. While we were trying to figure out who we were, they were fighting for the right to be who they already knew they were.
Yeah.
Right. And like there's something about your story that's resembles that,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. It's like
because you were still the same guy, you said, but you had to drop some of the pretense, right?
yeah,
Some of the-
exactly.
Yeah.
It was like it also was a lot of I had this like burden growing up. It's like when I grew up in a very it was a closed environment.
Yeah.
Like I had my friends from the yeshiva, and everybody I knew was religious. Like I didn't really get out of that circle.
Yeah.
And around the time that I was like 15 or 14, something like that, I started like popping out. Like I started working for a newspaper, for Maariv,
Right.
like as a young reporter.
Maariv back then was like the biggest newspaper, or
There was like Maariv LeNoir, like it was like youth reporters writing about anything like technology, politics, like relationships.
And what the hell did you know about any of this stuff? at
Well,
that age?
that's a good question. But somehow I
What
couldn't.
kind of a shitty paper is this?
No, it was awesome, man. Ariv, don't diss them. But
I'm joking. Obviously.
no, but I wrote about there were like two folks from my school that did that, and
Okay.
I met there like a very good friend of mine who went ahead and like also became an entrepreneur and like an incredible person. Um, but that was kind of like my first interaction with people who are not religious, and I remember
Right.
that I was like embarrassed. I was embarrassed. It's like I don't know how to behave around those people,
Right.
and also I felt that I'm representing the entire Judaism in front of those folks
Oh my
because
God.
everything that I do is how they're going to perceive religious people. So I was like, I wasn't, people like religious people tend to like say a prayer before they do anything, like
Yeah.
before like they drink water, after they go to the restrooms, like
Yeah.
everything. And I didn't do that. It wasn't part of my life. I wasn't a very good religious kid, but when I was near them, I tried to do that because I need to be, mamlachti. I
You had to be like an ambassador.
Yeah, I need to represent my world in the best way I can.
Yeah.
It was like a lot of stress. I remember hating that. And that situation like repeated itself like over and over again. Like
Yeah.
when I did all kinds of screening for my army service, and I went to those like envoys of student exchange, like it was always like the same thing. And when I stopped representing that part of my world, it was very
Liberating.
yeah, it's all good now.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then another thing that I just learned about you this week. So there was an article, and the headline was something like you the guy who that CEO of a startup that's raised $100 million had failed 9 times.
Yeah.
Failed nine failed startups. Is that more
yeah,
accurate?
I think like it was a more of an expression. It's like I failed 1,000,000 times before I won. It was like 9 times, but
Okay.
but there were a lot of no. It also depends how you count. There were a lot of not the outcomes that I hoped that they will be. So, for example, like I did like products that didn't really took off, and like I had like a blog that didn't have like meaningful readership, and I did this this company that eventually got acquired, but that wasn't the result that I was hoping for. So there were a lot of things that I started and I didn't finish.
So you sold the company, your investors are happy, they got their money back, maybe a little bit of profit, and there you were all sulking to the side like, oh.
I was talking, but
You know what I
but that wasn't like nobody that ends up being like in like a small acquisition. I think so is not psyched with the result. This is not what you're thinking about when you're starting a company.
Right. What were you thinking? Like, what was the expectation that you had?
To build a very important company in this space, like take a market, like bring a lot of innovation to an industry that had no innovation at the time. That was like the previous company, and and it's like I'm happy with the result, but at the time that was not the result that I was aiming for.
Are you happy? Because when I read that. When I read that about you, I was like 9 times. Okay, whatever the number is, like I've also failed a few times. So like bigger projects that I've tried to do, like I've tried to write books that no one wanted to buy, and I don't know how to feel about it. Like on the one hand, it sucks, right? It's like, oh, okay, not good enough, right? On the other hand, when I look back on it, the journey, like while I was doing it, were some of the happiest times of my life.
Yeah, because this is how you learn. It's like in this weekend. So I.
No, but you learn after the fact. I'm talking about during the project itself.
It's like this. The process of learning is the process of trying, failing, succeeding, understanding it was a failure, trying again, and in retrospect, you look back and you see like, oh man, like I really made some progress here.
Right.
And then you can also, and this is like depends on the person you are. There are people that can be very happy with what they do, no matter what the world is telling them or what they see their peers are.
Yeah.
There are people that are seeing this, the people who started in the same place with the same starting point, and they moved further or didn't move at all, and then this is how they measure. And it's like this weekend, like I got a present for my family to my birthday, oud. It's like a
Musical instrument.
Yeah, a musical instrument.
Yeah.
And I'm a guitar player. I play the keyboard. I play like percussion. I play a lot of things. But
Yeah.
oud is different. It's like a very, very different way to play an instrument. A way to strum. A way to there are like half tones, different set of mind.
Okay.
And I'm practicing. I'm toying with it. But I feel for the first time that I wouldn't have the time to really experiment and fail and try and fail and learn how to do that, because I don't have the time to do that. It's like when I learned to play like instruments, it was, I had hours, I had days, I had years to play with them.
Yeah.
And I had a band and we did like concerts and they sucked. And then we learned from that, and then we were awesome. But then, like in retrospective, I'm embarrassed because we actually sucked.
Yeah.
I thought we were awesome, and and I wouldn't have that for this poor little oud, because this is the only way that I can really be good at that.
Of course.
And it's like
Yeah.
I'll have that for other stuff,
Yeah.
for business, for my kids, for my relationship, but not for that. But this is really highlighting the way that you learn.
But it's interesting because you picked something that you're terrible at.
Mm-hmm.
But you picked that consciously. Like I'm going to be really, really, like maybe the worst oud player in the world. Like there are moments where I think I'm the worst podcast host in the world. You know what I'm saying? But like I'm out there because it's like, okay, there's only one way. I feel I know exactly what you're talking about, right? What is that? Like where does that come from? This drive to improve, but like in the most painful way possible.
Yeah, like so why do you feel like that?
What do you mean?
The worst podcasters.
Oh, yeah.
What made you feel this way?
Because okay, so here's the epiphany I had yesterday. Every episode I record until now, it's like I ask people like, well, what do they think? And I like the feedback because it's like, tell me what you think, right? And I get like surface level stuff, like sometimes I record an intro to each podcast and I'm reading a script and like, well, you kind of sound like a machine talking, like not a real person. Fair enough. Or certain things are going on in my mind, like, is this room not conducive? Is this not warm enough? Do I, is it should this be in my house? Like, should this be in your house? Should this be in your office? Like, what's the right setting? All these kinds of thoughts are going through my mind. And I view this exercise as an attempt to fall into a deep conversation with someone and to learn someone, and also and what that feels like.
Yeah.
Obviously, right? Like you've had those conversations they lasted 3 hours and you didn't even realize.
Yeah.
And you didn't want it to stop. And every time I finished recording something, I wasn't getting that same feeling. So that's the standard by which I'm measuring what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that's the standard that that's what I want to give to whoever wants to listen. And I wasn't doing that, and I knew it. Like I couldn't point my finger on exactly what was wrong until last night. And I was preparing for this interview, and I was like, all right, bunch of smart things I want to say to Noam. Free speech is a really interesting thing, and every episode has to have a theme. And then I was like, you know what? I'm the problem. It's not the guest. It's not this place. It's me. Like, I'm supposed to be paying attention to you. I'm supposed to be the way I put it to a friend last night, I was madly typing away my epiphany. Was like, I'm supposed to be looking into your soul.
Okay.
I'm supposed to be paying attention to you, and really, really paying attention to you. And that's the only way that I can actually, something that you say will register with me,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll learn something, and it will change me for better, for worse, whatever, right? And so this is what I'm trying out with you. So you're my first guinea pig. I hope
Okay,
it's
cool.
going okay.
Yeah, it's going very well. Like I ask you another question. It's like,
Yeah.
what are you hoping to achieve?
Okay. Wow.
By doing this podcast?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's a long answer, but
We have time.
we definitely have time. So in the recording that I had yesterday, I mentioned this thing of I read Nietzsche, it's Beyond Good and Evil. You ever read him?
Mm-hmm.
Fucking pain in the ass. He's just so dense. He really makes you work. Anyway, he has this thing in this section of this book called Beyond Good and Evil, and it's called The Prejudices of Philosophers. And he calls into question the claim by the great philosophers of history that they were out developing their ideas in search of an objective truth. And he says that's bullshit, essentially. And he says, look, A, there's no such thing as objective truth. Put that aside. But B, we're vessels, essentially, for competing drives, impulses, instincts, whatever you want to call it, right? So we want love, we want beauty, we are hungry, we're thirsty, we want to move around, we want to grab coffee. Like there's all sorts of motivations and drives that are going on at the same time, and they're all competing against one another
Needs
all the
and
time.
wants. Yeah.
Yeah. And only one of them manifests itself in reality at one given point in time.
Right.
You're picking up the cup, you're gonna drink.
Mm-hmm.
That's the will that has won so far.
Yeah.
And if you then just start extrapolating that across space and time, it's like all of us, all conscious beings, have this will that's fighting to get out of our bodies and into the world, right?
Yeah.
And so the reality is just a negotiation between all these competing wills. That's what he calls reality is just a will to power.
Yeah.
And so applying that to the philosophers,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you say you're out for objective truth. Bullshit, right? You're out there to mask some, I don't know, some craving for fame or money or women or whatever, you name it. You know, maybe you feel like you're just a weak child, and you want some really smart cover so that no one can bully you. I have no idea, right? And it's fascinating also to think about it, like if you think about it for people like you, right, who impact way more people than I do, or like someone like Mark Zuckerberg, right? The guy develops Facebook in Harvard. He's 18 years old, or 19, 20, whatever. Like, what was his motivation? Did he want to get laid or something? Like, out of that drive comes this behemoth Facebook, and it's all over the world. Like, is that the story? I'm not saying it is, but there's something akin to that that's behind it all. With me, I have many motivations. I mean, this is what I want to do with my life. I mean, this is the thing that gives, one of the things that gives me the most meaning, right? Is to be alone with someone else and to hear their story, because you're alive, and it's there's so much to learn from you. Like there's so much to be grateful for. Like here you are out in the world. You took I'll describe it this way: a courageous stand when you were 19, and then you fail your way through your next decade or so, and here you are at the CEO of ActiveFans, which is, you're basically at the crossroads of free speech in the modern era. You're there. No one knows who the hell you are, but you're right there. You're touching. You're dealing with it, and it's like, that's a hell of a responsibility you took on. And like, how cool is it that I get to sit here and talk to you about it, right? And hopefully other people can learn. Like, because when I'm talking to you, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, but I was thinking about free speech, and I was like, yeah, free speech. It's the most important right that we all have. but I've never really thought it through in any deep sense. Well, maybe I'll table that discussion for later, but why am I doing that? I mean, that's a motivation. I mean, there are other motivations, I suppose. One is I think that conversation is damaged today. Like, and part of that is technology, right? Like, you're sitting in a room with someone, you're grabbing lunch, and any interruption can disrupt the flow of that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And people are getting a bit more extreme in their opinions. They are less forgiving, right? I'll give you an example. Like, I had a friend over at the house, and she's very left-leaning in her views. And somehow we got into the topic of like catcalling, like men when
Yeah.
they're out in the street and it's like, hey baby, And when I see that on the street, I think,
You see that on the street?
right, very rarely,
Like,
right? We rarely, but it happens, right? You do
Okay.
see it, and like this morning I saw it.
Really?
Two drunk guys, some woman was sitting on the bench, and they were being assholes about it. And I think, like, come on, don't do that. You're going nowhere with that. In fact, you're going backwards.
Mm-hmm.
No woman, no person wants to be treated like an object. They want to be treated like a human being, and they want to be paid attention to. So I maybe a part of me thinks like if I record enough of these that people can follow an example of like how exactly to talk to people, how to pay attention to people.
Mhm.
Perhaps that's too grandiose. I don't know. What do you think?
It's not that I given a lot of thought to why podcasters and what's the goal or what makes a good podcast. I'm just like thinking about what I like, and I think there's like two types of podcasts, like the one that are like educating you, and the one that are entertaining you, and the best are
Both.
combining them.
Yeah. Right.
And it's not like entertaining you, like, that's so funny. It's more of like listening to this is how I'd like to spend my time, and
Yeah.
I'm getting like an added value out of it.
Right. Right.
And it's like,
Well, what does added value mean? Like in a business sense?
It can be a business sense. It can be from. You told me that
Uh-oh.
a few months ago. We spoke about taking care of yourself spiritually. You probably don't remember that.
Sounds like something I would say. Go on.
And I asked you, what do you mean spiritually? And then you said like taking care of your inner self. It's like the things that you probably didn't use those same words.
Yeah.
But, it was in Hebrew, but it was kind of like the things that make you whole, and not things that are religious. It's like spiritually always
Right.
was associated in my mind to
Right.
religious stuff.
Right.
So like for example, there's like an amazing podcast that I follow called War Heroes, like something about that, and it's like there's like a guy that works in technology that I admire personally, that interviews every week, every 2 weeks, like for 3-4 hours, like people who were like in special forces, who did like 5 deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
From all over the world, Australia, UK, the US,
Yeah.
and they just tell their story. Since the day where did you grow up? Which sport did you play in high
Yeah.
school?
Yeah.
To why did you get drafted? What did you do?
Yeah.
What's your story? Why do you like about this? Why you're passionate about what you do?
Yeah.
And there's like those sometimes banal stories, like things that are like it's not
Right.
it's not really interesting and right if you think about it like from a higher perspective, but the actual story of that,
Right.
what happened, is so wow. That's the story of a person, just a soldier. maybe he didn't even do anything meaningful.
But you were a soldier one day.
Yeah, but it's not because of that.
But don't you identify with some aspect of you?
Yeah,
to
I was
story?
an analyst. It was both. It's not like it's not a soldier, but it's technically it's a soldier,
Yeah.
but it's more about listening to that story of this person who grew up in Idaho and wanted to go to like wanted to be a lawyer, but somehow ended as special forces.
As you do.
And this is his story. Is fascinating, and I found myself like listening to this like 3 hours every single time.
Right.
So I really understand your motivation to tell a story of someone.
It's not that I want to tell a story about anyone. It's just more like what makes, for me anyway, what drives me about these conversations is my personality melts away in the face of this. I'm not aware of myself and all the faults that I have. Like and what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get into your mind, and to see if like some of the things that I experienced are in your story as well. Like I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Did you come close to death when you were, not you yourself, but people around you? Did people die when you were young?
Like I don't know if young, like 19, 20.
So around the time that you actually also started to
Yeah.
break away from your parents'
Yeah.
tradition.
But you don't mean like your great grandmother passed away. It's like things that are like supernatural.
What was the thing that happened? That who died in your family or in your life?
It's like it's like people passed away. It's like even like I can't remember even when. I think that the most meaningful death experience that like I had is when I was like 19, 20. It's like my stepdad passed away from cancer.
How old was he?
How old was he? Like not even 50, something like that.
It's a big fucking deal, man.
Yeah.
And so
50-ish.
So-
maybe.
that has to leave a mark on someone. Like I'll give you another example. Like my best friend in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
He, as a kid, he was chubby, didn't do well in school,
Mm-hmm.
but he grew up in a household where the parents didn't really get along. I think eventually they got divorced. A lot of tension in the house. I think the older brother left the house. Like, I can't be here anymore. The eldest, I think. And something clicked. Like he hit puberty, and all of a sudden he just decided he was going to work his ass off. So started studying really hard, but still had a troubled life at home. And at one point he just packed his bags and moved in with a friend. And you think, fine, right? But it's actually a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
To leave your parent. Like no kid, most kids don't do that.
Yeah.
Right. But this guy packed up his bags and moved in with a friend's house, into his friend's house. And then we go off to university after we graduate high school, and was a 5-hour drive away. So it's like enough. Okay, far away, far enough possible from the madness that was at the house. And I think it was in his second year. So they were a family of 5, and one of his older brothers died in the summer of I think it was his sophomore year. And so, obviously a traumatic experience. And then the following summer, literally 1 year after, his father dies. And again, just he's got to deal with that. And something, and this guy was working really hard at university. He wanted to be a doctor his whole life. And then something just snapped. And he decided, and to be a doctor in the United States, you've got to study university. You've got to, and it's all huge. It costs a crazy amount of money. It's several $100,000, and it's a huge undertaking. It's I don't know how many years of study, working really, really hard, absorbing a ton amount of knowledge, all the while. And he decides, okay, I'm going to graduate university, and then I'm going to take a break. and I'm gonna just hang out. I'm gonna be, and he moved to Colorado. He was a medic, and he was living in the mountains. Not living in the mountains, but he would be a medic and be one of those people on a snowboard who would help people, schmucks who was slammed into a tree or I don't know what. And then he moves to Washington D.C. He broke up with his when he was in university. He broke up with his girlfriend from high school. Moves back to D.C. And then somehow ends up with her. Corny fuck. And he's a waiter, and he's just doing drugs and just having a fun time in Washington D.C., which is a great city, by the way. And then we go traveling together in Europe. Like, he's just trying to live it up, And then he comes back and he just buckles down, And he's and since then he's just working really, really hard. He went to one of the best medical schools in the country. Like, the guy is on a fantastic track, super solid, And it only dawned on me recently, like that there must have been a connection between having his brother and his father die at such a young ages. I mean, his brother was 19, 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
His father must have been around the same age as your stepdad. And to think, oh, this ends. And better make the most of it. And so I think, he that must have gone through his head. And do you think that happened to you?
It's a good question. I think it's very difficult to try to assess how profound something like that is, like, on your life.
Yeah.
It's like I had like an experience once that, like, I was walking like a distance, like when I was like very young, and someone asked me recently, do you think this experience affected the way affected the way that that you experience sense of enjoyment, like, and for like, give it, like, when I was like very young, like 12 or 13, I walked by myself from between two distant cities. So it was like in hindsight, it wasn't that big of like long of a walk. It was like 15 kilometers.
Okay.
It was meaningful for like a 12, 13-year-old kid. And I didn't know anyone. It was like I was like, I knew the area, but I was like kind of scared. And I was pretty happy with myself when I like got home, and I just came back from Thailand with my family, and like I told a friend of mine that it's like I had like a day there where when I was like in the middle of the night, just like by myself, like walking in this like very shitty neighborhood in Bangkok, and I felt amazing, like because since I was like very, very young, I really enjoyed being in those like shady, weird places, like in dark alleys in India and in Nepal, and just like kind of like get lost in a place that I probably shouldn't be here.
Why? What do you feel?
I don't know. It's like I just feel free, happy. It's like I cannot explain that. And
Weird.
then
Yeah.
a friend of mine asked me, "Did you have an experience like when you were a kid that you found yourself? Can you try and look into your past and find something that may explain that?" And I was like, "No, what are you talking about?" And then I thought, well, wait, there is this thing.
Yeah.
So why am I mentioning that? Because maybe, like, to your question, that had an effect. But I'm trying to find a pattern in my life that this experience could explain.
Well, so maybe if I because I've seen death, but not to people that were close to me. So, for example, my grandparents died, but I didn't really have a close relationship with either of them.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, three of them. I didn't. One was she died very young, but I was two. I was like 12 or something when she died. Didn't really understand what was going on. But for me, it's bizarrely like my encounter with death, and I put in quotes, is that when we found out my wife was pregnant with our first kid, that was the moment I realized I was going to die. And it's so bizarre because like I didn't ask for those thoughts, you know. So we find out, and then my cousins come into our house, and we're like, "Get out of our house! We want to talk about this, you know, but we can't because you know
Yeah.
she was like 6 weeks or something." And you know, as I'm lost in my own thoughts, she is as well. We're just glancing at each other while they're talking, and you know, and then all of a sudden, I just remember having the following series of thoughts, which was, okay, I'm going to be a father.
Mm-hmm.
Fathers get old. Old people die. I'm going to die. Right? And like since then, like it's been a process. It's been a slow process, but it's like, oh, this doesn't come back, you know?
Yeah.
Like as a young person,
How old were you?
I was 30
Okay.
30 when she was pregnant. 31 when he was born. And but you know, in my 20s, I acted as if I was indestructible and I had all the time in the world,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I don't think you did, right? Because you're out there trying like mad now to see how badly you could fail in so many things, or not.
I don't think there's such a difference. It's like I heard someone saying like a nice liner, and that really resonated with me. Like yesterday night, that entrepreneurship is a sort of a self-expression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what Nietzsche was trying to point out to all of us.
Yeah, it's like in a sense, but it's more of like you mentioned Zuck and why he did things, and I don't think he had like a certain motivation. I think he just couldn't help it. It was just like, you know, like he had an idea, he did it, and it was the same way that like a painter, you know, had thinks about like an image and he draws it, and like a musician is playing it because just like you can't help it. And if you're lucky enough to have the resources to do that, from, you know, both like financial point of view, and also you have the connections to do that, and the motivation and time, and you also get lucky and it works.
Yeah.
It's like there's no one particular motivation. There's always like this, like for anyone, there's something else. There's like some, as you said, like money, fame, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like being accepted, whatever.
Yeah. That's a big one.
But this is never it. Like if it's, I don't know anyone that what's driving him, because they would never survive. It's like there's no, for example, there's no musician that is doing it for the money. It's too hard of a job. Like if you think like most companies fail, go look at musicians.
Yeah, right. It's true.
This is like it's less rewarding, but you can't help it. Like and so there's no.
But I would argue,
reason.
and this is another, as I said, there are many motivations, that we all live, especially if you're in the West, we all live to a certain degree in that you said you can't help it, but if you have the time, the motivation, the resources, like I think we all more or less live in that reality that we're so incredibly wealthy, right? I mean, if you really stop to think about, like, just put all your money worries to the side, like if you lost your job and you had no sources of income right now, I mean, how long would you have to go until you worried about where you're going to live and what you're going to eat? Might be a few years.
Okay.
And access to healthcare and so, same with me, right? And I don't have no income right now, zero. so that's just another thing of like maybe helping also just people change their like to let to confront people with their mortality, to encourage as many people as possible to do the thing that they love, and also imbue a sense of gratitude, I think, for all the amazing things that we have, you know. And I think that it's a problem that's afflicting modern society, and you could see that everywhere, right? That I'm reading now, for example, Homo Deus by Yuval Noah Harari,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a passage there where he's talking about how wealthy we are, but suicide rates, for example, in places like Switzerland and France, I think he mentions, were higher than Jamaica and Haiti, which are far worse off than those countries.
Mm-hmm.
In South Korea, you know, they went from a very poor country into, you know, a technological powerhouse in something like 4 decades or something. But the suicide rate there went up by 6-fold or something in the same period. So something's off, right? And you can tell by also just the public discourse as well. Like people are really mad and upset. I saw a poll that half of Americans expect a civil war, you know, which is insane, right? Like that's the state of their country that they.
Yeah, but I think those things like are not necessarily as a.
But they're indicative
anything
of
to do with
something, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's like you know, it's like from the U.S. perspective, and I'm not like an expert of like U.S. politics, but
Yeah.
like civilizations sometimes have this like signals of troubling times, like faith in the system. How many people trust the FBI, for example, right now? There's not none. There's like I think 34% of Americans.
34% of Americans
like,
trust the FBI.
No, like doubt of like the integrity of the FBI.
Oh,
like,
the opposite. So
things like-
34% of Americans think
things
the FBI is out
something like that. And there's,
against
like,
their own interests.
Like the U.S. is very polarized right now, like in
Yeah,
a way
yeah,
that is way higher than like in other places around the world.
Right,
And,
right.
And I'm not sure this has anything to do with technological advancement. Because like it's not that the U.S. is meaningfully more advanced than the U.K. or France. They have like a lot of innovation, like from a business perspective.
Yeah.
Google, Facebook, Microsoft, they're like a U.S. company.
Yeah.
But the people like, that are using those systems, they are the same people.
Yes, I would only argue that the first people to get the most cutting edge innovations, and most of the time it's just more convenience, are Americans, right? So Amazon, one day delivery, I think that by dint of the fact that America is the largest, most prosperous market in the world, most technological companies want to start there first. Yes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so
I doubt that explains.
No.
big
You're right.
portion.
You're right. You're absolutely right. It's not the explanation, but it's an explanation for. It's a partial explanation for what's
Mhm.
going on. I mean, Americans are just getting more and more and more and more wealthy, whether they realize it or not. You know, when was the last time anyone ever went hunting for their food? Now they can ask for their groceries in 10 minutes by the push of a button. You know, in other words, wealth, as the way I see it, is just how many steps are you cutting out of the chain from manufacturing to putting something in your mouth or in your house or something like that. And it's getting longer and longer and longer and longer and longer. Like no one has any idea what it's like to farm anything. Right? I have no fucking clue, right?
Yeah, yeah, you know, but I think definitions of poverty and convenience are not these like definitions. I think there's like way more people, especially in the U.S. now than like 20 years ago,
Yeah.
that they do not know where like their next 10 meals are going to come from.
Sure. No doubt about it.
Yeah,
No doubt about it.
and they have like they cannot see themselves buying a house. They cannot see themselves like sending their kids to college.
Yeah.
And they're very upset because they see people, making like a lot of money in those like white collar jobs.
Yeah.
Getting their debts, withdraw, and and they're not part of the system. So I think this is what's behind what you were talking about. I think it's not about like higher depression rates because of technological advancement. I think it's like higher depression rate because of kind of like understanding that the system isn't fair right now. In South Korea, it's something very different. The way that people treat the government is not at all like they're treated in the U.S., but they have like a different. It's a different society. It's way more limiting society. What you can actually do with your life, self-expression, like free speech. It's very different. The way
Right.
you're being expected to grow up, you're expected to do stuff. It's super hard, and actually, like things like social media are making it like harder for them. But I think it would be not fair, like to compare between things like South Korea and like the state of
So you don't see
U.S.
you don't see a link between technological innovation and I call it like a lack of gratitude for the abundance that we have.
I don't know. I don't think it's about like social media. Like
No, not social media. Forget social
yeah,
media.
if you
I'm talking
also,
about tech-
also consider like print and newspapers and motor vehicles as like a technological advancement that actually changed the perspective of people and their expectations of life and their expectations of themselves. So yeah, but like I don't think it's a matter of the last 20 years or the last 10 years. I think
No.
it's like a matter of like the last hundreds or thousands of years. People
wha-
change because of the way the way they change their life. It's like you grow your expectations of life are dramatically different from the expectations of your ancestors.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's like now you expect to bring yourself to express yourself through a podcast.
Yeah.
100 years ago, they wanted not to die when they were like 40.
Right. Right.
Very different.
Or they had 6
but
kids
it's-
because they really wanted 3 and they knew
but
3
it's
were going
the
to die.
same species, right?
Yeah.
It's the same
Yeah.
species.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
like nothing changed.
Yeah.
Nothing really changed. It's like
Yeah.
that's like the stuff that surrounds you. So you can assume that 100 years from now, 20 years from now,
Yeah.
our kids' expectations will change dramatically.
Okay, so let me try this.
Different options.
Let me try this from a different angle. So forget the inequality bit because I think you bring up good points there. How about like transgenderism, as an example?
Mhm.
Now I have no clue what to think about. Like to me, I would love to talk to a transgender person. Seriously, but I really have no understanding of this at all. But the fact that it's technologically possible for someone to go through the surgery and change sex, more or less, right? 'Cause, I mean, men still can't give birth to people. But the fact that they can still almost entirely resemble a woman, right? That's very disorientating to all of us who are used to the old ways, as you said, right? We're still the same species, and technology does that to us in many, many ways, right? I mean, that's a very sort of controversial example, but you can take any banal example of like, and this is an old technology of sitting in a car, and you're sitting in traffic, and you're just want to kill anyone, just get you out of this car, get me to where I need to go already. But what's actually happening, and this is what people don't realize, and this is what technology does to us, is that, well, the journey that you're taking right now, say it's like a 1-hour drive, 100 years ago would have taken you several hours, and you wouldn't be sitting in a metal box with air conditioning and you're listening to your favorite music, which you can just change on demand, or your favorite person talking to another very interesting person. None of that would have been available to you 100 years ago. And yet we were so enraged, right? We're honking on the horns. We're so mad. It's just that feeling that we have right now is toxic, right? And I think this is happening in ways that I can't even put my finger on entirely exactly what's going on. But I think it's undeniable that technology does have these effects on us, whether we realize them or not.
Like, for example, like when I'm upset in the road, it's because I want to get to a certain place and I can't because there's like a lot of cars surrounding me.
Sure.
I don't know if it's about technology. I think it's about like being in a hurry all the time and getting bored from doing something that when I was like 20 years ago, it was like, okay, like in order to get from one place to point A to point B, it takes like, 2 hours, 3 hours, like
Right.
open the radio and, wait for life to pass by. And it's like, and this day and age, not that I'm not very proud of my carbon footprint right now, but like I'm flying from LA to New York to to DC to Boston, and I'm doing it like in the course of like 3 days,
It's insane.
and this is the pace that I would like to live my life at, and then
No, I know, but the fact that you never think about
no, but I'm in a
how.
hurry, so it's like
Mm,
so if there's like a person in front of me, it's like move away. I need to get to the where I need to get at, and it's
yeah.
you're big. I don't want to wait here. I have stuff to do, and I think this is like where things are coming from. So it's like people
No, but
don't want to do what things that hold them back.
but our sense of being in a hurry
Uh-huh.
is radically different now
Yeah.
than what it was.
You have like more stuff, more options.
You
Like,
know?
like I sometimes every time I let my daughter choose the music, like on the car, I'm immediately regret that because like she keeps like pushing the buttons, like let's hear this, like 20 seconds of that, 30 seconds of that. Like Ariel,
Yeah.
just choose whatever you want to listen to and move away. But like that's her pleasure. She's like, there's
Yeah.
so many options.
Yeah.
It's like and I wonder if this like variety of options. It's like you and I grew up. There were like in Israel there were like one channel.
Right.
Then there was like another one.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like and if you had cable, you had like I don't know, like 10 more to choose from.
Yeah.
Today it's like it's like Disney, Netflix, Hulu. It's like
We're gods.
how
Yeah.
the gods of streaming. It's like how do you
Yeah.
even choose what you like? It's like how do you even like focus on something?
Yeah.
And the human beings that will turn out from the other side of this, like this day and age, like 20 years from now, are very different from who we will be in their temperament, in their patience, in how they choose stuff,
Yeah.
how they spend their
Yeah.
time. Like
Yeah.
I see kids in the playground playing Roblox, one next to each other. They sit in the playground.
Roadblocks?
Roblox, like this, like a mobile game. Like it's
Oh,
it's a
okay.
game. It's
Coming soon to me, I guess.
It's coming soon. Yeah, it's like it's an awesome game. It's like a virtual. It's like a real metaverse,
Okay.
and they're sitting in the playground, sitting next to each other, each with their phone. They're speaking, they're talking with each other, and they're playing Roblox, and they're playing also with each other in Roblox, and that's like a very different way to spend time. And now they're like making pizza together, and then they'll like fight monsters together, and then they'll just like hang in this like virtual cyberspace together,
Right.
but they're actually in the same space physically as well. And then they'll go home, but they'll keep their virtual gathering. And this is like a very different mindset than we had. We had like now we're online, now we're not. Now we're together, now we're not.
Right.
And we had this kind of like laws of like there was also like the physics of social interactions. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Of course.
now those borders are convoluted. There's no borders.
Right.
Like, you're always online. You're always together. At some point, you have your image. Think about like you're going to the party and you want to look good. You want to say the right things. You want to be at your best, and then you're not in the party and you're shutting the door behind you, and now it's only you, and
Yeah.
all masks are off. Like you can pick your nose. Nobody's looking.
Right. But it's also
What's the equivalent of that for like these days that you're always online and there's always someone looking? There's like this expectation of like keep like posting stuff, keep like updating stuff, keep
Right.
talking. It's like you don't get a rest.
right.
And
right.
if you're not doing it, the people that you maybe look up to are doing that, and you want to be like them. And if you think that
Yeah.
you can't do that,
Yeah.
okay,
Imagine.
it's a lot of stress.
Imagine. Okay, this is in my old job when I was at Bloomberg, and I would have days I'd come home, I'd pick up the kids, and like I was still on the phone as they're my kids were sort of playing or they wanted to play with me, and like they saw me addicted to this thing.
Yeah.
That's the example I'm setting for my kids.
Yeah.
And I have no moral standing to tell them don't use the damn phone. I'm a hypocrite if I don't put the damn thing away.
Yeah.
And but
A lot of work. This is
I sometimes I wonder like if there's a way that we could do like a 10 commandments for virtual social interaction. Because
it's like having 10 commandments for life. Like you can put them out there. Probably most people won't follow them. Right? It's like shall not steal. It's like,
including you, right? Yeah.
like yeah, good luck.
But let's I want to ask you about the company and how are things going? Like are you worried about the current state of the economy and is there an apocalypse coming or
I don't think
What do you see?
apocalypse. I think it's we're heading into what looks like a recession.
Yeah. how do you feel that? How do you sense that?
Just like there's like there's a definition of a recession, which is like two consecutive negative quarters
Right.
of like the entire economy.
Yeah.
So the US is there, and Europe is there, but it doesn't really matter. It's more about like what will happen, and it's too soon to really say what. There's not enough information from like let's see how the year will end, from jobs, from inflation, from like other things around pricing of other assets. So it's not about like the macroeconomic thing. Also, the world is like all over the place. It's because it's all connected. It's like what's happening in tech is like it's interesting, but it's very tactical. It's like there's good startups will be funded. Good innovation will be needed.
Yeah.
Enterprises and companies will keep paying for good software, and users will use and will consume this.
Yeah.
Like reality didn't change. Maybe there will be less money for them to spend, but it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. We've been here. We've been there in 2000. It took like 3-4 years to recover. We've been here in 2008. It was like faster recovery. And also, if you look from like, you can open like a graph and see where we are right now. We're still better than pre-COVID numbers in terms of pricing.
Are you talking about stock market?
Startups.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, startups.
Like tech companies.
Mhm.
So it's like, from basically we're kind of like back to the mean, and there's no like a big dip. Like I'm more concerned about the state of the world. Like I'm concerned about everything that is happening in the Ukraine, like in Taiwan, probably in the future, and in the rest of the world, like the new shift of powers. How's that going to change our reality? Like what you said about like civil war. Like I don't think the civil war would look like the civil war, but I do think there are a lot of changes, bad changes. What I experience is bad changes coming to the world, and that's like what I'm nervous about.
Yeah, and
it's not really related to the company or the specific economy that I'm part of.
Yeah, but it's something that is, really, really close to what you guys do. So ActDefense, you guys, tell me if I'm have this correct. You guys work with some of the biggest social media platforms in the world, and I never get this right. So you help them find and take down what, extremist content?
No, we don't do take it down. What we do is like ActDefense is a trust and safety company, and we develop technology that helps detect malicious content online
and define malicious content, or that's up to the client to do.
Yeah, it's like every company that is relying on user-generated content in order to operate, in order to make their customers happy. Like where there are like chats, people can talk with each other, or publish listings, or do whatever, like stream content. There's a lot of content coming from users, and 99.99% of those users are awesome.
Right.
They're like publishing content that is fun, entertaining. Maybe it's boring and nobody cares, but No, this is content. I guess like this, the platform that this podcast will be at. It's like is one of those platforms.
Right.
You created content. You're a user of this platform.
Yeah.
And other users are now listening to it. This is like the way it works.
Yeah.
But sometimes, like a minority of those folks don't have like best intentions. Some of them are trying to, let's say, bully someone else,
Mm.
or find like a kid and start talking with them in order to convince them to send them sexual content.
Yeah.
Or they're trying to advertise like a scam. They're trying to get money from someone else, like illegally.
Yeah.
Or they're trying to sell fake opiates, like all kinds of like terrible stuff.
Right.
This is something that nobody wants. Like you don't want as a user, like the company don't want, because it's like it's really, first it's wrong, but also it's like it ruins the experience. The advertisers don't want it, and the regulators, they don't want you to do that.
Right.
It's illegal. So what do you do? So how do you find those bad pieces of content? And that's what we do. We develop the technology that finds that.
Okay. And again, this I'm always fuzzy, but you can't say the names of your clients because remind me again. Like, there's a certain sensitivity with law enforcement.
Yeah, it's not. It has nothing to do with law enforcement.
Ah.
Just like the companies. This is like a very sensitive topic, and our customers prefer to keep it, internal.
Oh, got it.
Which I respect and appreciate.
Right. So when we cooked up this idea to do this, I said that the format would be that I would be the avatar for the free speech absolutist, right? And obviously you would say, okay, well, fine, but there's some caveats, some important caveats here that you need to consider. And I even admitted such that, like, I tend to agree with it, and now I'm even more fuzzy about it. But so let me start by saying something that
Disclaimer.
No, not at all.
No.
That was a disclaimer. Now, Elon Musk, when he made the bid to buy Twitter, he said something. He tweeted something like, Twitter, for better or worse, is the public town square or something like this.
Yeah, the town square.
Right. And I thought that was a great metaphor because, imagine you're walking through New York in Times Square, right? And you're walking through, and there's just masses of people, and there's that line for some reason that's always wrapping around the Disney store. There's zillions of tourists, and you're listening to the conversations that are going on. People are talking, and it's just people are talking about what they bought. People are talking about the government. People are talking about whatever, the weather. And then all of a sudden you get to one corner of the street and there's a jihadi radical beheading someone in front of everyone.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, so something's different about Times Square. And then you cross the street and then all of a sudden you see a 45-year-old man raping a 4-year-old boy. You're like, oh, okay. I mean, Times Square is really changed since I last saw it. I mean, if you allow this to continue, right? The line of the Disney stores is going to be, it's going to disappear quick, right? And no one's going to want to come to Times Square, maybe even New York. It's like that place is too fucked up for me to visit. And so if I'm the head of Twitter or the stockholders of Twitter, it's like, yeah, I also don't want that kind of crap on my platform, because who wants to see that stuff? If I owned a store, and I would kick those people out of my store. But here's where I'll push back, and you tell me what you think. Is that you remember when ISIS first exploded and became a big deal, and they were releasing these videos, right? The Jihadi John and all these beheadings. Did you watch any of them? You did. Okay, so I watched one. I can't remember. Someone gets beheaded. Gruesome video, but there was not any point in my whole experience watching this thing that I thought this is a good idea. Like, I saw it. I said I was repelled by it. It's completely repulsive. I said, you know what? I got the point. This is a really, really bad idea. And so do the people who want to curb that kind of stuff online or just in general in the public, do they think do they have such a pessimistic view of all of us that they think we'll be exposed to this, we'll watch this, and then we're all just going to be, jihadists flocking to this thing and also posting this stuff on YouTube, beheading other people, like or other sort of acts of homicide? Is that the threat that they're responding to, or is it just more of like I really just don't want, like, you can do this on your own platform, just don't do it on mine? Like, what do you think is at work here?
I think there's like several things that you mentioned. Like let's start with like the first one. With,
Yeah.
you mentioned like what Elon did, and like so there's a spectrum. Okay, there's like Elon went against the way Twitter is thinking on content moderation because he believes it's too extensive. And I think we saw what he meant in the interview that happened last week with Zuckerberg and I think Seth Rogen.
Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Seth Rogen is like another guy. Where it was where like Zuckerberg said that the FBI reached out to them before the leak of the Hunter Biden
Yeah.
laptop with the New York Post and said like something is coming. Take care of that, and they reduced distribution. He didn't really say like what does that mean, while Twitter really blocked that.
Right.
And then it happened to not be like totally fake. So he brought the question: is this really the job of social media to curb these type of things?
Yeah.
This is like one thing. Another thing is this is something that Elon said in writing in his tweets. Of course, that like abusive content, like pedophile content, and those type of stuff are things that we don't want in the platform. This is like to the main part. Like eventually, those.
I mean, it's even against the law, right?
Those are private businesses.
Right.
Like it's not subject to. Let's say, if someone from their users thinks it's legitimate, so it should be there. It doesn't work this way. Like if people think this is disgusting, so it's bad for business, so it won't be there because it's bad for business. Think about it this way. Not that even if you don't want to think about right or wrong, or if I'm going to see this, will I go to immediately be a jihadist? This is not how.
So they're not thinking on this level.
This is not how things are actually work. You have like people who define the policy based on a lot of needs from like business needs and from legal needs, regulation. There's now like a new regulation in Europe that is saying that you can't do this and that, and now there's like a new regulation coming in California about what you can do for kids, even about features, even about things like autoplay, and there's like in the UK there's regulation that is saying that you can't even do like push notifications for kids all like not under 16 after 10 p.m. There's like a lot of stuff that are very geo specific.
Yeah.
And they have also what they think is proper or not. Like for example, there's like one company would allow nudity, one company would not allow nudity. One company would define spam as more like in a very diminished way. One would say everything that is duplicate is spam. And also, for like, what's the difference between something that you can post online for education purposes and for kind of like historical purposes? This happened. Okay, so maybe it's brutal, maybe it's disgusting, maybe it's bad, but it happened, and we want to have this documentized in some way. And people say, I don't care about the documentation, I want this out. It's like this is eventually a decision that is being done by the owner of that business that you're now using. So it's not really.
So where is
moral question for them?
Yeah, but so where is the place to view? What is the proper place to view these this kind of content? I have no desire to. I don't go look for a pedophilic. I don't look for pedophilia. I don't.
Good.
No, I mean, it happened to you by accident, right? That's the reason you started the company, right?
Yeah, it's like I came across bad content on one of the file hosting services, and it was just like, oh my god,
Just
how did it happen?
just so I know, like, just how dark it gets. I mean, can you describe what it is that you saw?
It's like it's not something that I learned that when I'm describing the things that like sometimes I get to see as part of my work, it's not really doing a good service to their life. So it's like it's just like very very dark kids pornographic content. It's like it's not something that you would like to
See, but
have
that right there,
visualize
like,
picture of.
let me push back there. What makes you think that I can't handle it?
Maybe you can. I don't know who else is listening to it.
Though I'm not
you
showing
know-
this to kids. Well, maybe they are going to listen. I have no idea. But that's the thing, is that we do have to, on some level, wrestle with the evil that is out there, right?
I think
And
most people don't want to. Even if there's a place in their mind that they say, maybe I should, but I think that most people
yeah,
live their life very happily without being exposed and knowing all of the dark aspects of it. It's like, and they don't care.
But here's
and it's a good thing.
here's the thing. Like, I have a naive. There is a naive part of my personality. Like, I do tend to look for the best in
Mhm.
people. I think that's I it's not fully naive. I know that people can be not nice and even worse, and we live in a we live in an area of the world where we get plenty of examples about just how cynical people can be. But if I don't get those examples of people killing each other for not the most noblest of reasons, or doing other terrible things, how do I then temper my naivete? I don't really have the resources at hand to do it. I have to be confronted with the terrible things that people can do to one another. And it's not just me, right? I'm no different than everyone. Like,
Mhm.
I cannot go. I would be a useless person if I went on living through the world not knowing that people are capable of doing terrible things. Like, for example, I don't know if you had this growing up in Israel, but in Miami, where I grew up, I went to a Jewish private Jewish school,
Mm.
and they would take us every year, I think, when we were very very young. Would take us to Holocaust museums. Now, we didn't experience the full horror. No one obviously can, but they took us there to show, perhaps for other motivations other than what I'm trying to explain, but it does tell the child, and we were kids, 6, 7 years old, I think, that there are people that don't like you. And forget about the reasons why, but like, that's the constant state of the world. Like, we're constantly fighting with one another, and thankfully it's becoming less and less deadly, but it's never a surprise to me that people do terrible things to one another, because that's just kind of the way things are at the moment. And it would be a terrible thing for me to live my life in constant shock if that was the case. Maybe I should. Who knows, right? Maybe I should just be in total horror and just totally horrified every time I see a jihadi blow himself up, and other innocent people in a market somewhere in Pakistan. I have no idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's the proper reaction, but something tells me that it isn't, right? Because now I know I have to watch out for certain kinds of bad ideas or bad beliefs, say.
Okay. Those are endless. It's like I think like this is like from macro perspective I understand what you're saying. It's like
Right.
don't be naive. It's like I don't know if taking like kids to like the Holocaust Museum when they're 6 is a good idea, but but understanding that the world is there's more in the world than like teddy bears and unicorns is like it makes sense.
Right.
Does make sense.
And in fact, those teddy bears have claws and teeth and
Yeah,
can
it's like
rip you to pieces.
there are teddy bears, there are unicorns, but there are also like bad things out there. But,
Yeah.
but I don't know if like going through the rabbit hole of every bad thing
Yeah.
in the world is a good place to be. It's endless. Like there's like endless good things in the world. There are endless bad things in the world.
Yeah.
And surrounding your and trying to see the gruesome details of everything is, it's an endless road, and it's also pointless if it's just like for serving curiosity, because you'll never see everything, and if you just see it to see it, it's like you. I don't think it's like it's not something that, for example, I'm even like I'm doing. It's like
What does it do to you? What has it done to you?
it's terrible. It's just like you. It's like what it done to me. It gave me motivation to do everything I can in order to stop it.
There you go.
But once I know it's there, it's not. I don't. For example, we have like a team that is doing research for new ways to avoid detection by people who distribute child sexual abuse materials.
Sorry, say that again.
We have like a team that is responsible to do research about ways to avoid detection by people who sell child sexual abuse materials.
Okay. Okay.
They come across a lot of trends in this space, new types of content.
Wow.
So I don't need to know about every piece of news.
Yeah. Yeah.
In
fact, there was that article on Time about Facebook. They outsource some of their content moderation stuff to people in Africa.
Yeah, that's different. This is more about like this decision making and
no, but those people were depressed. I mean, a lot of them suffered from really deep psychological harm and emotional harm from watching this crap.
Yeah, like I'm not familiar with the details of like these articles, but this article, but so I can't really comment on that.
Yeah.
But it's more about like for your sake, for like people's sake. It's like it's not. I'm not even telling my wife about like stuff that I see. It's because it's like, how is this helping her? She knows there's like bad stuff. Why does she need to know about this particular case?
Yeah.
It's like, for example, there are a lot of car accidents. Do you need to know about how badly someone's bones were broken when they crash this Fiat?
I suppose
Probably
really
not. Would it help you be more careful? Probably not.
I think there's a danger to being too overprotective if you learn about this as well, right? But maybe not, right? Like maybe there's a way of like, oh, okay, like we need to put structures in place to protect our kids from this stuff that does happen in the world. Like we can't just close our eyes to this.
Mm-hmm.
For example, like my wife, okay, she is brilliant. She's the kind of person that walks into a room and maps everyone out in like seconds. She just knows. She just tears you apart. All the things that you're trying to do. She just knows exactly who you are, and she knows within 5 seconds. Worth my time, not worth my time. Good person, bad person. And some of this is hereditary because her mother is the same. Really, it's freaky. And she studied criminology for her bachelor's, which I thought, like, what a weird. This is precisely the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Like she studied and really enjoys analyzing, observing, learning about psychopaths.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Sociopaths. Because my theory is that she's like trying to see the evil or the bad in those people so as to become a better judge of character when she walks into a room. Crazy?
Mm,
And she's a lovely person. I promise.
it's like, I think don't think it's crazy, but again, I think it really depends on what you're trying to do. It's
Yeah.
like, if you want to be like a biologist, you probably want to learn a lot about like the characters of organisms and nature, and like understand like everything that you need to understand about your topic. So if you need to understand the difference between, I don't know, non-consensual sexual content and consensual sexual content, you
Yeah.
really need to be exposed to a lot of stuff, but you're doing it in order to develop technology to
Right.
understand what's the difference and stop one of them. So there's a meaning, there's a goal for why you're getting
Yeah.
exposed to stuff. If it's kind of like more like because I want to know, this is like, I would not encourage that.
No. I think she's got a. I think unconsciously, again, I could be wrong. I'm speaking in her name. Maybe she thinks completely differently, but I think unconsciously, I think there is that drive to become better at a skill that she was already really good at to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a very practical skill, right? And she's hardly ever wrong, which is it helps you in life. So let me shoot myself in the foot for a second, right? Just to give you a sense of how little I had ever thought about free speech until I started thinking about you, is that you take it for granted until all of a sudden you start hearing, like, I'm hearing it more and more and more and more and more and more and more. Free speech is under attack. Free speech is under attack. And I'm thinking, like, okay, this has never happened to me in my life until now. And do I think, is it under attack? And it's like, well, it is kind of getting into it. We're into this sort of creepy thing where you can't exactly say what you want to
Mhm.
say. Perhaps it's good. That's a good thing, right? Maybe not, but I tend to think not. But as I was thinking about it, and I looked up like what Supreme Court decisions, what types of speech are banned according to Supreme Court decisions, and one of them was slander,
Mm-hmm.
libel, I guess. I don't know exactly what the libel laws are. I think they're a bit more relaxed in the U.S. than in other places, but still.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's interesting. Like, if free speech is completely free, then I can go out on a megaphone in the street and say, Noam Schwartz is a pedophile, and this is all just a big, like, and then I could try to make up rumors and put this, on all the newspapers, and if I have a far enough reach, if 100 million people all of a sudden think that you are the thing that I'm lying about, that's going to destroy your reputation. It's going to take up, like, it's destructive, right?
Mhm.
So the fact that those judges thought about this is interesting, and it has some purchase, I think, right? On it has some utility, right? We can't just be lying about one another and destroying each other's reputations. I mean, it's just too much work to put the pieces back together.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, another one was the incitement to hatred, and that one was, it's clear, like, okay, I can't be saying that Noam is a pedophile and therefore we should all hate him and kill him or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also very strange, I would say, exceptions, I guess. Like, for example, in America, you have, now I'm going to sound like a total ignoramus, but like the Confederate flag. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people in the South say that most people don't really understand. It's about something else. It represents something else. But like, for a very long time, I mean, in fact, there was a war being fought, and on one side of it, which had that flag, they were pro-slavery, and pro-slavery entails having a view of a certain group of people that's really, really bad, in fact, hateful, in a sense. So there's a bit of ambiguity there in that sense, but the fact that these judges made these limitations on free speech is interesting. Like, it makes me think that free speech isn't entirely free, although it is totally necessary, right? It's the only corrective mechanism we have.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think of the state of understanding of free speech, generally speaking?
It's a very, very complicated topic with many, subtleties, and it's like we don't have enough time to really cover everything. But it's like even from what you said, it's like you're talking about, from the state of society to how people experience what's wrong and what's not, to the way the Supreme Court is defining slander. There's like a lot of things that even got convoluted in what you said.
Okay.
And it's like, even if you compare it, it's like nothing is really, there's no like absolute rights, and there's always limitations in society. It's like everybody can, take whatever profession they would like, right? No, like you can't just become a doctor and start treating people and charging money for that. Or
Okay.
you can just like sell them medicine. There's like regulation for that, and it's like there's always some limitations. So and again, when you're talking about free speech, it's like let's try to dissect like at least some of what you said. When there's an idea that meets distribution, there are consequences. Okay,
Yeah,
let's
of
put
course.
it like in a formula.
Yeah.
So if you're saying, "Hey, you're an asshole," that's like awesome. If you're saying, "Hey, you're an asshole," and you're publishing this in the New York Times, and I'm like losing business because of it.
Yeah.
Well, there are consequences.
Definitely.
Like, you could say that, but now you're going to pay because of the damage that you created. So in just this like very very simple idea that it's like it's easy to understand. Say, yeah, you could say that, you could publish that,
Yeah.
but because of what you said, you're going to pay. Did I limit your free speech because you got penalized because of what you said? I don't know. Probably yeah, because like there were consequences to what you chose to say. There's also free speech. Like for example, would you say whatever you want in your neighborhood? Like you'll go to your neighbor and say, "Hey, you're a dick." Probably not. Why? Even though you think about that, because there will be consequences. He would dislike you. He would say other stuff. Like I don't know. You go to your church, to your temple, to your whatever. Like you can't say whatever you want there. You have a right to say whatever you want there, but you wouldn't. Like are they limiting your free speech? It's like it's like now, like you believe in an idea that now it's not socially acceptable to believe in it. Like people think that it's like for example, let's say that you had that like even without getting into like specific things, people are scared to say what they think today, no matter on which side of the aisle
Yeah.
like they're
Yeah.
sitting.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of vocal people from both ends that no matter what you say, it would not be good enough.
They're ready to destroy your reputation for
Exactly.
whatever the hell
You're
you
not
say.
left wing enough,
Right.
right wing
Right.
enough. You're not like
Right.
liberal enough. You're not conservative enough. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Like, you always get shit.
Right.
It's like so. Is this limiting your free speech? Okay. So who is the person who is limiting? It's the government. It's Twitter. It's your like your minister. It's who? So there's so many aspects to this question. It's
And you
like,
think some of it is self-imposed?
of course, like even most of it. It's like when people are not saying what they're thinking, it's not because someone
Yeah.
is telling them not to do that, because they're thinking they shouldn't do
I
that.
think, but the objection there is that increasingly, and I suppose the U.S. is the most afflicted by this, but in the spaces where we're supposed to be allowed to pursue whatever kind of idea, dangerous or not.
Mhm.
In fact, all ideas are dangerous. I'm giving it a different top spin, but idea distribution. Who knows what happens when
Mhm.
you let loose an idea out onto the world? Those places are becoming more and more inflexible in terms of what they permit and what they don't. And if you're going to essentially inculcate citizens of your society, where in the universities they can't say or be exposed to radical ideas, but good, bad, doesn't matter, left, right, and then in public spaces like a Twitter or YouTube, whatever, that it's questionable if they're public, but They kind of are, right? Because we're just generating, the public is generating all this information
I
out
think
there.
they have a social responsibility because of their distribution.
Yeah.
Yeah, but still like a business, a private business.
But even like a church or
Mhm.
a mosque or is also, it's not a private place, right? It's not owned by one individual or
Well, it depends where. It's like right, like a church is owned by the people.
yeah, well, making it public, right?
Well, it depends the definition of public. It's like, can I go to a church in Utah and tell them what I think about the way they should worship? No, probably not. If I'll bring 1 million people to tell them how they should worship, who cares? It's private, but it belongs to a lot of people. If I own a company with 99 other people, this is our private company, and we decide what to do with it.
Yeah.
There are there's governance
Yeah.
around this company, but it's a private company.
No, absolutely. And but again, that's what makes it so confusing. Is you're absolutely right. The people who manage that company are responsible to the people that own it,
Mhm.
and to the so-called users as well, right? And that's what's so confusing about this, about social media, right? And the world that you're playing in. But it's like it's on the threshold there of public or private space, and that's what makes it so interesting. And like, so you're there and you're helping these companies. You're not obviously helping them set their policies. Do you ever advise them on what's good practice or
No.
bad practice?
We help them make sure that their companies are being run the way that they want them to be run.
So
So it's like
you
if,
give them the tools to carry out their own
Yeah.
policies.
exactly. It's like
Okay.
if you think that, for example, I don't know, think about an app that teaches kids how to code. Okay,
Okay.
like 6 and 7 and 8 years old. Like it's like a STEM app. They don't want anyone to post nude picture. This is not what the app is for. And if like some parents will see something like that, they would be like scared.
Right.
I would be scared.
Right.
Another app that is it's like for adults, consenting adults, they would not have a problem with nudity being exchanged in a private message. Same technology, same messaging, different policy. So we give, but that app with the nudity, they would not allow people to use specific racial slurs.
Mm.
They would limit someone's freedom of expression as far as it's regarding to racial slurs.
Right.
Those companies are trying to execute their content policy. So we would give them the tools to do that
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
help them find things that they don't.
What do you think about the Elon Musk, for example, said Twitter they've got a left wing bias, right? They're more eager to boot people of the right wing off their platform or cancel them.
Of
or,
what?
That Elon Musk said, for example, at Twitter, that Twitter is more eager to boot out people who have a right wing bias.
Well-
so I don't care really about left or right in this. My question is more like, what do you think? Yeah, I mean, how do you deal with that, right? I mean,
With what specifically? though?
political bias. Like, when does one person go too far, or is it really just
That's this problem is way beyond Twitter. It's like, first off, like,
yeah,
if I could, I think Elon Musk got so many amazing problems that he's trying to solve, like in space and
yeah,
and fuel, that like I just wish he'd stop wasting his time on Twitter. Not that Twitter is not amazing, but it's like I think he has like bigger things to deal with.
How many
but
companies is he running? He's
I don't know. But
5, is it
it's
now?
like this is like it's like just Tesla, the ball company, and like SpaceX is like more than enough. I don't think I think this is like a good thing that he's not doing this acquisition, but bias is it's like newspapers were accused in bias like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
because the reporters were writing more about something. If you're not covering a certain politician, it even if you're not writing bad stuff about that politician, you'll be accused for being biased for the
Mhm.
other side.
Yeah.
'Cause, as long as they spell your name right. If there's like underrepresentation of a specific race in a computer game, this game would be biased. AI is biased. Autocomplete in like search engines are biased. This is not like a problem that is about content moderation or social media or things around that. It's like we're biased usually. Let's say products that are being built are usually biased by the people who are building them. So people who are,
Yeah.
let's say, if the reporter is right wing, the newspaper will be eventually biased, like to the right.
Right.
And same, and vice versa. And it's like AI. A lot of the algorithms were built by white men, like in their 30s.
Yeah.
So they would usually, the autocomplete would be based on what they think or what they believe. There will not be a lot of representations to other types of people. So if there's like a specific political bias in content moderation, like you probably need to look at who's defining the policies, who's building the algorithms, how they're building that.
Yeah. So are there no policies about this? Just like random acts of the random judgment calls when this stuff happens.
Like I don't know the specifics.
But you haven't come across a company with a specific political leaning.
I see a lot of companies, and everything that I see in those companies are really incredible people who are trying to protect their products and trying to do the right thing. Like
Right.
all of those, like sometimes it's very easy to paint those parts of those organizations in a bad way because they're biased and they want to impose their wish and their opinion on everybody else. And it's like can't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
Like, but it's very easy to
Right.
to tell this story
Mm-hmm.
because people would be mad.
Right. I mean, even something like on YouTube, you can find everything there. You can find the extreme right. You can find the extreme left.
There's a lot of things like
Yeah.
everywhere. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I honestly haven't surveyed Twitter and on how broad the spectrum of opinion is on there, but where do you think? I mean, I was thinking about this on the way here. It's like you're the CEO of a company that didn't like. It would have sounded so bizarre 10 years ago to be doing what you're doing right now.
No, I don't think so.
What were there companies like this back then?
I think there were companies like ours, like also 15 years ago. But there was less focus on that, and there was no regulation. There was no, let's say, the public didn't really care. It's very similar to cybersecurity. Like everybody care about cybersecurity today,
Yeah.
but there were cybersecurity companies 30 years ago,
Yeah.
right? Or 40 years ago.
Right.
They were still protecting networks.
But no one was
Eh.
leveraging, no extremist voices were leveraging the internet in such a way that they're doing now, right?
What do you mean? Like,
Well, okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but like, what was pedophilia such a huge problem on the internet?
the internet was smaller.
Smaller.
Yeah, there were less people online. So
Right.
there was less harms, but like the proportions I think are very similar.
What
I don't
is
think
the?
that people became more bad. Like
Sure, no, of
I
course,
think
of
there
course.
was just like now there are like billions of people online.
Right. That's so
So-
as we've all migrated to the
Yeah.
web.
But the need was there. It was just smaller. This is what I'm saying. It's like there were like cybersecurity companies, but not as much as they are today.
Right.
Attacks are more sophisticated, but there were still attacks.
Right.
It's like, but it's right to every industry. Gaming is now bigger than cinema, like TV and music combined. but
Really?
but there was still games, 50 years ago, right? Pong, uh, but there were less studios. There
Yeah.
were less gamers.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, it's true. Everyone
problem was
everyone plays games. Adults, kids, everyone.
yeah. So it's like, but computer games was a thing. It's like there were like computer games before there were like operating systems.
Mm.
Uh, so it's
That's what you mean by Pong, for example.
Pong, like the game Pong.
Yeah.
So nothing is new. It's all just like evolvement of other things. There was like on BBS boards.
What?
The BBS board. It was like the old way to the old messaging boards where you were plugging like something into your TV, and there was like a phone number. It was like old, early 90s, old 80s technology for messaging boards.
Yeah.
There was some type of content moderation. Because if people wrote just like wanted to troll other folks and change the name of the board, and they wrote like bad words, someone went ahead and changed that.
Mm.
And then like 5 years later, there was like a rule that detected this word because it happened all the time. So what is this if not a content detection moderation technology?
Yeah.
But like there was like more distribution, more people online, more platforms, more formats, more sophisticated attacks.
Right.
So the solutions are more sophisticated. But I don't think that like
But-
this is an old problem and an old solution.
Yes. The point I was trying to make was that it's gotten so big that it now requires an external company to help manage the problem because it's too much for any one company to deal with, right?
That's true because of the size.
Right.
It's like again, it's happening everywhere. It's like when you're a small company, you can deal with your own accounting. When you're big, you need like to call I don't know, Ernst and Young. It's when you're small, nobody wants to attack you, like do like cyber attacks, and if so, you can handle it.
So
When you're big, you call Sentinel-1.
So when you I mean, you said that you're worried about the state of the world
Mhm.
and where things are headed, right? You mentioned China, Taiwan. You mentioned the war in Ukraine. By the way, the war in Ukraine had, at least in the earliest stages, right, a misinformation aspect of it, certainly in Russia, right? They closed access to Facebook and they had their own narrative about what the war was about and what was going on over there.
Right.
And that's concerning, right? Because that's on a massive scale. I mean, how big is Russia? 100 and something million people. They're all being fed this stuff. And I mean, who knows how far a government can take this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Do you worry about? I mean, as it relates to you and your company, how do you think about the next 5 years, 10 years? I mean,
I think those are like different topics. It's like
okay,
disinformation is sort of a warfare, and it was for thousands of years.
yeah,
Sun Tzu is talking about disinformation.
yeah,
How use it and leverage it to win wars.
Yeah.
The difference is the smart distribution and how elusive is the way that you're operating it. So the more this information is being used in order to create, let's say, to get one nation hate each other. It's like you said, like a civil war in the U.S.
Yeah.
It's like if you're using this information to create this divisive environment, and like the right hates the Republicans, hates the Democrats, and you create more and more groups of people, and people on the coasts are afraid from people like in the Midwest, and again, like making a lot of like very, very high level inclusions. But
yeah,
this is very dangerous weapon if people can't really understand that they are now being like duped in order to think something that someone else wants them to think in order to serve a different motivation. It's like a company that wants to pass like a law that will serve their interest but will actually hurt everybody else's interest. So they're pushing this like bad narrative out there to the media
Mm.
in order to get public support for this idea that if you think about it from a very superficial way, it sounds amazing. But if you're like looking in the fine prints, you're saying, well, this is actually screwing me over. Um, and this is, this is something very, very dangerous, like for the world. It's like, you can call it business practice, you can call it like politics, you can call it whatever you want, but this is becoming more and more popular, and
But let
and
me
it's very different. It's also it's really changing the way people are perceiving what's happening in the
Yeah,
world, because it's
yeah.
like facts are not important anymore.
so
Not when you're electing someone, and not when you're supporting a side in a war, and not even when you're deciding like, what to like.
but okay, so let me tie this back to the discussion as well. Is that I suppose the question I should be asking you is, how do you think we, the collective we, are able to deal with bullshit, essentially, right? Or divisive, hateful bullshit. And now you established that the motivation of these social media companies is not some fear that we can't handle it. It's just more like, get this crap off my platform. I don't. This is not. Let's let this place be a civil, fun, rowdy,
Yeah.
whatever. But it should be a place
For
a lot
to
of peop-
communicate
yeah.
and have fun,
a lot of people want
or
to go.
learn, or
Yeah.
do something.
Yeah, or have fun, or whatever. All the things that are necessary in life, no doubt about it. But when I was talking about the naive person, and then being face to face confronted with some of the malevolence in the world, well, there's only one way to handle that, and that is to be exposed to it. And so I wonder, like, if we are, I'm saying this not necessarily that I believe in this argument, but if we sanitize our public spaces, then do we create the kind of people that are gullible to believe in, some strong man saying, "Oh, I'm going to fix all your problems," and then wouldn't that be wonderful?
Mhm.
But by the way, it's going to be at the expense of wiping out, a certain minority in our midst.
I think the idea is to don't try to help the companies make their environment safe, and not sterile.
Yeah.
It's like, and there's a big difference. It's like,
Mm.
there's a lot of opinions, and those opinions are awesome. It's like even the extreme opinions,
Right.
but it's like eventually there are things that like make people feel not safe, or really like dangerous, or hurting people, and this is where you need to like focus on.
Yeah.
So it's not about like, doing it, because if you have everything like super, just keep like the very everything that would be like super polished, super curated, you'll get like one type of experience. You get like Disneyland.
Yeah.
It's like awesome. It's everything's
Right.
curated in
Right.
Disneyland.
Right.
It's fun. But you want to, sometimes you want to see like real people.
Yeah.
Or like what everybody thinks, even if you don't agree with it. But I think there's like a difference between that and just like being exposed to a dick pic randomly, even though it's part of online world.
Right.
Well, if you want a dick pic, you know where to get it. We won't allow it here. And this all goes to eventually people vote with their with their phones. If they're going to this app, they enjoy the content.
I think you just created a phrase for the next 50, maybe 100 years. Well, who knows if we have phones 100 years from now, but political analysts say people vote with their feet or people vote with their wallets.
Yeah.
Now people
Exactly.
vote with their phones.
Because it's exactly, it say like, if this TV show or this like influencer or this whatever is so bad for you, it's like, well, it's like they have like 100 million followers.
Yeah.
People hated the Beatles, like they thought they're like so bad for youth. I'm dying my kid to like the Beatles now. So things are changing, but I think that things that are like kind of like everybody agreed they shouldn't be allowed. It's like this is easy, and I think the things that people do not agree on, that's a very small part of the discussion.
Mm.
This is like
Yeah.
but a lot of the attention goes there. Should we allow this? Should we not allow this? And this is like a discussion that will never end.
Yeah.
There's no right and wrong.
Right. Right.
Like
Right.
if it was so easy to define, like it was already being solved, because like everybody's looking at it. What is disinformation? What is not? What is misinformation?
Yeah.
What should be allowed? What shouldn't?
Although again, there are examples of things that we collectively agreed that was a really bad experiment, right? Like Nazism, for example. Bad idea. Let's not go there. Now, again, it should be studied, right? Because if a whole generation of people grow up and have no clue what that is, then someone finds out about it and actually connects with the idea and then no one knows how to defend against the force of those ideas. We're fucked. So there are examples that we have sort of delineated, right? Like, for example, slander, as I said, right?
but again, there's like it's different geographies. Like if you'll say I'm in favor of Nazis in Germany, you'd be banned. It's illegal. If you'd say I'm in favor of like Nazis in another like country, European country or like an Asian country, nobody cares. It's like, okay, say whatever you want. It's freedom of speech.
Right.
So again, it's like depends who you ask, depend where.
Yeah.
You can think that you said this experiment failed, and someone's saying I want to retry this experiment.
Right.
Well, should you ban them? Like should like Twitter like not allow them to open an account? Many people would say yes. Many people would say no. What is right and wrong?
Yeah.
It's a very complicated topic, and it's not for any head of policy somewhere to decide, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they'll get. It's a very ungrateful job. Job.
Yeah.
No matter what they'll do, they'll get hit.
So listen, great. You said it's an ungrateful job. So let me just express some gratitude, man, and that is that. You spent these 2 hours with me here, man, and that's a big deal. You run a company, your time is precious. How many kids do you have?
2.
2 kids.
Yeah.
And a wife, and 2 hours of your day, man. That's a lot.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I really appreciate this, man. It means a lot.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. I had fun.
Yeah, same here. Cool.
All right, brother. Take care.